They knew we'd die. That was the point. The mission briefing that killed 14 of my brothers lasted exactly 11 minutes, and Colonel Hayes delivered it with the casual tone of a man ordering coffee. "Gentlemen," he said, spreading a map. "Across the table in the command bunker, you'll be conducting a reconnaissance in force to Grid Square Tango 74. Intelligence indicates enemy movement in the area. Your job is to locate, identify, and report." I raised my hand. Private First Class Danny Rodriguez, 2 months in country, still naive enough to ask questions. "Sir, what about extraction?" Hayes didn't look up from the map. "Extraction will be arranged once you've completed your mission objectives." Something in his voice made my skin crawl. Not what he said, but how he said it. Like a man reading from a script he didn't believe. "Sir," Sergeant Williams pressed, "what's our backup if we encounter superior forces?" "You call for artillery." Support. Standard procedure. But Williams wasn't satisfied. He'd been in Vietnam for 10 months, long enough to smell bullshit. "Sir, Tango 74 is outside artillery range. It's 15 clicks from the nearest fire base." Colonel Hayes finally looked up, his cold blue eyes scanning our squad. 17 young men, average age 21, most of us barely old enough to vote. We were 3rd Squad, Charlie Company, not elite forces, not special operations. Just regular infantry, the kind of soldiers who got the dirty jobs nobody else wanted. "Gentlemen," Hayes said, his voice carrying a finality that killed. "Further questions? You have your orders. Move out at 0600. The meeting was over. As we filed out of the bunker, I caught a glimpse of other officers huddled around a different map, their voices too low to hear. But I saw Hayes point to our objective and heard one word clearly: diversion. I should have known then, should have understood what we were walking into. But I was 19, fresh from basic training, and I still believed that American officers wouldn't deliberately send their own men to die. The patrol began before dawn. 17 soldiers moving through jungle that grew denser and more hostile. With every step, the further we penetrated into Tango 74, the more obvious it became that this wasn't reconnaissance. It was a death march. The terrain was impassable. Thick canopy that blocked helicopter support, stream beds that channeled sound for miles, ridge lines that offered perfect ambush positions to anyone with the high ground. If you wanted to design the perfect killing field, you'd create something exactly like Grid Square Tango 74. "This is fucked," Thompson muttered, hacking through a wall of bamboo with his machete. "Nobody conducts recon in terrain like this." Williams was thinking the same thing. I could see it in his face, the growing realization that our mission made no tactical sense. You don't send 17 men on foot into an area where mechanized forces couldn't operate, where air support couldn't reach, where extraction would be impossible, unless you never intended for them to come back. The first contact came at 1,347 hours. A single sniper shot from an elevated position, perfectly placed to wound rather than kill. The bullet took Johnson in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the undergrowth. "Medic!" Williams screamed, but we all knew it was too late for stealth. The shot had been a signal, announcing our position to every enemy unit in the area. Within minutes, we were surrounded. The NVA had been waiting for us. Not waiting in the sense of a chance encounter, but waiting with the patient preparation of hunters who knew exactly when and where their prey would appear. They had predetermined firing positions, interlocking fields of fire, escape routes planned and rehearsed. They'd known we were coming. "Fall back," Williams ordered, but there was nowhere to fall back to. The enemy had positioned themselves to channel us deeper into the killing field, using terrain in superior numbers to drive us toward a predetermined location. Martinez died first, his head exploding like a melon as he tried to breach a fallen log. Chun followed seconds later, cut down by automatic weapons fire as he attempted to flank left. One by one, my brothers were being systematically eliminated by an enemy that seemed to know our every move before we made it. "We need extraction now," Williams screamed into his radio. 17 casualties and counting. Grid Tango 74 Alpha. The response crackled through static. Negative on extraction. Continue mission. Williams stared at the radio like it had started speaking Chinese. "Say again, Command. We have multiple Ki-R and need immediate medevac. Continue mission, Charlie 3. Acknowledge." That's when I understood. We weren't supposed to be extracted. We weren't supposed to survive. We were bait in a trap, and the trap was working exactly as planned. "Those motherfuckers," Williams whispered, his face going pale as the same realization. "Hit him. They sent us here to die." The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of hell in a jungle designed for killing, fighting an enemy that had been given our exact position and timing. By sunset, 14 of my brothers were dead, their bodies scattered across a grid square that would never appear on any official casualty report. Only 3 of us made it out: Williams, Thompson, and me. We escaped by doing something the enemy hadn't expected. We stopped fighting and started running, abandoned our position, ignored our orders, and sprinted through enemy fire toward the one direction they hadn't covered. We ran for 12 hours straight, through jungle and swamp, until we stumbled into a Marine firebase 20 clicks south of our original position. The Marines looked at us like we were ghosts, 3 filthy, traumatized soldiers babbling about a massacre in Grid Square. Tango-7-4. The debriefing was swift and brutal. Colonel Hayes arrived by helicopter within hours, his expression grim as he took our statements. We told him everything: the impossible terrain, the waiting enemy, the radio calls that had been ignored. Hayes listened without comment, taking notes in a leather-bound folder. When we finished, he closed the folder and looked at each of us in turn. "Gentlemen," he said, "what you've described was a successful reconnaissance mission that unfortunately encountered superior enemy forces. 14 brave soldiers died fighting for their country. Their sacrifice will not be forgotten." "Sir," Williams interjected, "that's not what happened. We were set up. Someone gave the enemy our position." Hayes's expression didn't change. "Sergeant, combat stress can cause soldiers to misinterpret events. What you experienced was the fog of war, not conspiracy." "Bullshit," Thompson exploded. "They knew we were coming. They were waiting for us. That's enough." Hayes's voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You 3 will be transferred to different units immediately. This incident is classified under operational security protocols. Any discussion of classified details with unauthorized personnel will result in court-martial." We were being silenced, scattered to prevent us from comparing stories, threatened with military justice if we spoke out. 14 men had died, and the Army was treating their deaths like a successful operation. I spent the rest of my tour in a supply depot in Da Nang, processing requisitions and trying to forget what I'd seen in Tango 7-4. Williams was transferred to a base in Thailand. Thompson ended up with a military police unit in Saigon. We never saw each other again. I came home in 1971, hollow-eyed and bitter, carrying secrets that I couldn't share with anyone. The nightmares started immediately. Visions of Martinez's exploding head, Chun's final scream, the sound of enemy laughter echoing through the jungle as they collected our dead. I tried to build a normal life. Married my high school girlfriend, had kids, worked construction jobs that kept my hands busy and my mind occupied. But the questions never left me. Why had we been sent to Tango 7-4? Who had ordered the mission? Why had extraction been denied when we were being slaughtered? The answers came 42 years later, in a manila envelope that arrived on a Tuesday morning in March 2013. I'd been following the news about declassified Vietnam documents, hoping that someday the truth about our mission might surface. When I saw the notice about newly released Army records from 1969 to 1971, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for anything related to 3rd Squad, Charlie Company. Most of the response was heavily redacted black bars covering names, dates, and operational details. But buried in the appendices was a document that made my blood run cold: Operation Rattlesnake After Action Assessment. The operation had been designed as a diversionary probe with acceptable casualty projections. 3rd Squad, Charlie Company, was to conduct a noisy insertion into Grid Square Tango 74, drawing enemy attention, while the real operation, a major assault on an NVA supply depot, took place 15 miles to the east. The planners had calculated that a 17-man squad would generate enough enemy response to fix the NVA's attention for the necessary duration. Casualty projections were listed as 1416 KIA, 0 to 2 survivors expected. They'd known we would die. They'd planned it. 14 young Americans had been deliberately sacrificed to create a diversion for an operation that wasn't even mentioned in the declassified documents. But it was the final paragraph that destroyed what remained of my faith in the military. I'd served. Post-mission analysis confirmed successful diversion of enemy forces from primary objective. Acceptable casualty ratios achieved. Recommend similar diversionary tactics for future operations requiring enemy misdirection. Acceptable casualty ratios. They were recommending that other squads be sent to die the same way we had. I called the VA immediately, demanded to speak with someone about war crimes and cover-ups. The woman who answered was polite but unhelpful. "Sir, those documents are 40 years old. Most of the officers involved are deceased. Even if wrongdoing occurred, the statute of limitations has long since expired. 14 men died because their own commanders sent them into a trap. Sir, I understand your distress. Combat operations often involve difficult decisions. If you're experiencing emotional difficulties related to your service, I can connect you with counseling services." I hung up, shaking with rage. They weren't going to investigate. They weren't going to acknowledge what had been done. 14 men had been murdered by their own officers, and the only consequence was a 40-year-old document buried in classified files. I tried contacting Williams and Thompson. Williams had died of a heart attack in 1987. Thompson committed suicide in 1994, leaving behind a wife and 3 children who never understood why their father drank himself to sleep every night. Was the only survivor left, the only witness to a war crime that would never be prosecuted, never be acknowledged, never be explained to the families who'd lost sons and husbands and fathers. So I'm writing this account. Not for justice. That ship sailed decades ago. Not for closure some wounds never heal, but for the record. So that somewhere, in some form, the truth about Operation Rattlesnake exists. Martinez was 20 years old when he died. He wanted to be a teacher after the war, planned to marry his girlfriend from San Antonio. Chun was 19, the son of Chinese immigrants who'd sacrificed everything to give their boy a chance at the American dream. Johnson was 18, barely out of high school, still carrying letters from his mother in his breast pocket. 14 young men, full of hopes and dreams and plans for the future. 14 families who received folded flags and official condolences and lies about their sons dying heroically in combat. They didn't die heroically. They died because staff officers needed a diversion and considered their lives acceptable losses. They died because someone calculated that 14 dead Americans was a reasonable price to pay for tactical advantage. The mission briefing that killed my brothers lasted 11 minutes. The planning that sent us to our deaths probably took longer. Some colonel or general or intelligence analyst looked at a map, decided that Grid Square Tango 74 was the perfect place to sacrifice a squad, and wrote orders that would murder 14 of his own soldiers. Colonel Hayes is probably dead now. Most of the officers who planned Operation Rattlesnake are buried in Arlington National Cemetery, their headstones listing their decorations and commendations. Heroes, according to the official record, but I know what they really were. I know what they did to 17 young soldiers who trusted them with their lives. They knew we'd die. That was the point. We weren't reconnaissance, we were ammunition, expended in a tactical gamble that sacrificed American lives for strategic advantage. The only mystery is why 3 of us survived when the casualty projections called for complete elimination. Maybe we ran faster than expected. Maybe the enemy got sloppy. Maybe God decided that someone needed to live long enough to tell the truth. I'm 72 now, the last witness to a war crime that will never see justice. When I die, the truth about Operation Rattlesnake dies with me. Unless someone reads this account and understands that sometimes the enemy isn't across the battlefield. Sometimes the enemy is sitting in a command bunker, moving pieces on a chessboard, deciding which soldiers are expendable and which objectives are worth American blood. They knew we'd die. That was the point. And 42 years later, that knowledge is eating me alive just as surely as the bullets that killed my brothers in Grid Square Tango 74